Del Rio, Texas, Rob Wade and Robert Garza. Two guys who dive. This episode of Two Guys Who Dive, recorded live Saturday, 8 March 2014, episode 96. Here's a tip for you. Well, welcome once again to another exciting episode of Two Guys Who Dive. And I'm your host, Rob Wade, and you'll notice my co-host chair is empty again. Scuba Bob is not available for this evening, even though he's had 2 weeks off while I was working on the Upstagers' latest show, which concluded last weekend with great success. We had very good crowds and very good performances. And, of course, with every kind of live performance, there's the opportunity for interesting things to happen. So the beauty of it is that if you have season tickets and you come see the show every night, you do get to see a slightly different show each night, because something is bound to be different. Nuances of performance. Some nights you're on, some nights you're not on. A number of things can impact the performance. Technical issues that may take you off your mark, or may actually push you to new heights of your performance. It doesn't seem to matter how many times you do a show, especially of this type where it's a musical review, so it's just various numbers from a number of Broadway shows. You can have a night where you're just off. You had a bad day at work, or some bad news, or anything can impact you. So you get on the stage, suddenly you're drawing a blank, or you're just not there in the moment, and you're not paying attention. So you miss the choreography, and so everybody is lifting a foot and you're lifting an arm or something like that. A number of things can happen, but got just a few pictures I want to show. This is a picture from one of our rehearsals working with the kiddos. That's Catherine McWilliams there. She was, as well as being a performer, she was also sort of the kid wrangler. That is not a job that I envy anybody for. That's just not my forte. And so she was working with them at this point, getting ready for the show. Obviously we had most of the set up that we were using for this year. Still a few things left to go up, but interestingly, when you're working on a show and you're practicing elsewhere in front of mirrors, or we have a place called the Firehouse, which used to be an actual firehouse, but now it's converted into a arts facility, if you will. And we typically will practice upstairs because there are mirrors, there's a dance floor, etc. And the kids were actually practicing over at Georgia's School of Dance, which is a local dance company, instruction company here in town in Del Rio. And it's always different when you take it from your practice area to the stage, because a number of things change for you. Just the fact that you're in a new location takes you mentally off your mark. But you add to that the fact that you're now suddenly on a stage that has set pieces that you may have to work around. And this would be true whether you're working with a musical where you're battling through dance or choreography, or even just regular blocking. You've been practicing with maybe some fold-up chairs or something like that while getting ready for getting your blocking down. And then suddenly you go out to the set, you go out on stage, and you've got maybe your actual furniture that you're going to be using. And it's a world of difference. So it's tough kind of adjusting to that. Trying to bring up the stream here. I hate it when I love that. You go to a website and suddenly it's running stuff automatically. Interesting. Am I signed in? No. I don't care. That is funny. Wow. That's interesting. Okay, I'm pausing that. So you get used to changes in your blocking suddenly because everything's changed for you. I was taking some shots. I think this was the Saturday night of our opening weekend of the show. And this is Ben Graff on the right and Courtney Jones on the left, sporting a horrible blonde wig. She hated wearing it, but the song they were doing is from the Broadway musical adaptation of Legally Blonde. So obviously, being a brunette, she would not have, if you were trying to create the impression, you wouldn't want to be. You would have to go out You'd have to go out there in the blonde wig to make it work. Trying to get signed in here to the chat room. For some reason, it kicked me out. Yeah. Interesting. Legalese now suddenly they're throwing on there. All right, now I got the chat room going. That was interesting. Here we go. Let me pop that out there. Oh, good grief. That's better. Of course, the thing about Ustream is, and that's of course what you're watching this on if you're watching this live. The thing about Ustream is, it's when you're not paying for the service, which is actually pretty expensive. It's like $99 a month to go commercial free. So to get the free service, you've got to endure commercials when you first go to the site, as well as when you when you first go to the site, and as you're watching it, it'll pop those in every so often. So it's really annoying. So anyway, nobody in the chat room at the moment. Let's see. Next picture. This is the opening of Act 2, where the ladies were doing Dancing Queen from the musical Mamma Mia, which is a show that was written by the two guys from ABBA, and it features, of course, it's all ABBA music that's in there. And the play is a fun show. And of course, getting to wear wild costumes like this is always fun. So, and there's Tara in the pink, and then you got Myrna in the blue, and then Catherine in the yellow. And they did such a wonderful job with it. It was a great way to open Act 2 with a number that everybody is familiar with, and seeing just all the fantastic color and the wild costumes, and their harmony, of course, was just and the choreography was wonderful. So. It was a great way to open Act 2. And then this is Catherine with some of the kiddos. I think this was Spoonful of Sugar, and from, of course, Mary Poppins. And she did a wonderful job, and the kids did a wonderful job with that. Again, wrangling all those kiddos to work a show is challenging. But they thoroughly enjoyed it, and even in spite of the typical challenges you have with attention spans, shall we say, they were still wonderful. Let's see. There's Bill Culpepper, who recently retired as one of Del Rio's finest. He was one of our cops. A long time upstager. He and his wife Gloria have been here since I think the early '80s, maybe the late '70s. doing shows, and he was doing, I think this was from The Impossible Dream from Man of La Mancha. Doing a wonderful job, of course, with that. This is our wonderful tech crew. They did a bang-up job as always. Will Thompson there, who's in the back, the tall one in the black sweater, he actually was a performer in the show, but he also was assisting with technical aspects of backstage because he wasn't in as many numbers as some of the rest of us were. So thankfully he was helping out Kelly Jackson there in the lower right with working stage stuff behind the scenes. Kelly Jackson was the director of the last show that I was in, and she was, of course, starred in it, Remember Me, and did a wonderful job. And of course, right next to her, Angela Colon Escobar, she was running lights for the show. She does a wonderful job with the lights. She's very quick, on top of it, pays attention. And that's important because without the lights, you don't get seen on stage. So, but everybody did a wonderful job. Obviously, live theater can be done minus a lot of that stuff, without sound. But and without lights if you've got natural lighting, but, doing it like outdoors in the round, that kind of thing. But really, modern theater is all about having excellent technical support to do the show. So they did a great job. And then here is almost all the cast. Unfortunately, we didn't get a couple of the folks out here in time to get the picture. Since this was the final night of the show, this was the last Saturday night, we were, some of the microphones that were the body mics that we were using were borrowed from a theater group that's in Brackaville, Texas, and they are getting ready to do their show, so they needed their microphones back post haste. So it was one of those quick. As soon as everybody's, the show was finished, we had just a couple of minutes of meet and greet with the audience, and then quickly reassembled on stage to get the cast picture done. And of course, there were tons of cameras going because with this, especially a show that has a bunch of kids, you have everybody in the world, all their parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles are taking pictures. So you can't move practically till the last camera is snapped. And but we had to get through it quickly so we could strip down, get the microphones off, and give them back to the theater group in Brackaville. So we appreciate that they were able to loan those to us. When we have a show that is so much music with so many performers and you don't have enough mics, it makes a big difference if you can borrow some from somebody so you're not having to trade out mics every time you turn around. And so we had a wonderful time. It was a great production, a lot of fine work done. Great performances. We don't have a formal videographer for the show, and so at least every so often I'll take one of the tripods here in the studio and load up we've got a JVC full HD camera, but it is consumer grade. So the lenses aren't as good. The zoom capability isn't as good. It'd be nice to be able to get better quality at distance. Since we didn't have somebody who could run the camera, I basically had to set it up, get a fixed point, fixed focus, work white balancing and that kind of thing, and then just get the sound guys to click record, hit the record button. So we could get the show recorded. So I recorded a couple of nights, the final Friday and Saturday night. So we'd have, memories. It's not just about the pictures, but being able to look back and say, oh, wow, when I was that young, I did that show and had a great time, blah, blah, blah. It would have been great to have somebody who could have done close-ups. And so, unfortunately, when you just have it set to catch the full view, that's the part that kind of sucks, is that you don't get the zoom in. And unfortunately, with consumer grade cameras, they, even when you make adjustments for brightness, because this is a stage with a lot of light, especially with dual spotlights on you, it tends to wash things out. I compensated where I could, but unfortunately there were parts that just are washed out. As far as you're wearing white, or your skin is white, and it's just the right angle. I noticed in it with our camera that it appears to be, if you're not dead center of the camera, dead center of the field of view, as you move towards the edges and you get hit by all the light, especially two spotlights, that's when it tends to wash out. It's not as bad if you're in the center of the field of view. So I'm thinking maybe for the future we might want to look at doing some more investigation of possible cameras that would do a better job, or the cheaper option would be to get somebody who would be available on a couple of nights to actually work the camera. Because if you zoom in, then the field of view is filled with the subject, and so you're less likely to have these kinds of washouts, because even after you've done the white balancing. So hopefully we can do that. But in the meantime, I took the 2 nights and I worked here in the studio with the various video clips, and kind of through text and credits and transitions and things like that, and created the video. So as a matter of fact, got the producing the DVDs now for folks, and again for free. I just bought a bunch of blank DVDs, and so we're making it for them, because we're not doing it to make money off it. We're just doing it for the pleasure of personal viewing. And I have put, now the downside, and this might be some news to folks who do this kind of thing for home. If you've got an HD video camera, high def video camera, or you're using your phone, most of your higher end phones have full HD video capability. Be advised that if you try to make a DVD of what you've captured, it's going to downscale it because it's DVD, because of the type of format that DVDs are. So you're not going to get the full high definition. That's where Blu-ray comes into play. So unless you have, unless the software you're using supports Blu-ray, and you have a Blu-ray burner, you're not going to be able to create a disc that's viewable when you just stick it in a machine of the high def version of the show. You would have to, you'll be able to save the high def version, but you'd have to watch it like you would like a MP4, MP3, just a media file on your computer. Or you can do what I did. I uploaded the full HD version to YouTube. So when you go to YouTube, you can actually click on, as you're watching it, there you'll see a little icon in the lower right that lets you, looks like a little cog or a little wheel, and you can change the resolution to the full high def if that's how you upload it. So I did. I uploaded it. By default, it shows it defaults to, when you have a full HD video, it will default to 720p, which is the bottom line of high def. But you can click on that and pop it up to the full 1080, and it really does make a difference. Looking at the DVD version versus the high def version, it really is a big difference. So washouts from white balancing issues notwithstanding, our camera did a really good job of video of recording the show. It's just a shame that we don't have close-ups on things, and I would love to, because there's a lot of opportunities, especially with the ballads, to get some good close-ups of the great performances, because there's nothing like seeing really crisp video of what's going on. And I'm getting more and more into the photography and videography aspects of diving, and so it's kind of washed over into how I view regular pictures and video, which is why my Lumia 1020 phone is so I love it, because its camera is unmatched in any smartphone. You can't touch it in any smartphone. It'll be interesting to see what the next generation of devices, smartphones, come out. I'm sure that Nokia, having been just recently acquired by Microsoft, I'm sure they're not going to be slowing down at all on their camera, but they have set the bar that Apple and Samsung, to name two of the big ones, are gunning for. So somebody's going to be working something to step up that. So I love competition because it spurs improvement, and that's awesome. So anyway, we had a great show. If you got to see it, appreciate that you came out. If you didn't get to see it, sorry that you didn't get to see it. You can catch it on YouTube if you so desire. Let's see. My wife and I had the opportunity to see the movie. If you caught our first episode of the year, which we go over, we had myself, Troy, and Robert here, and we went over our wish list of movies we planned to see in 2014. And so we like to review the movies. And so the next one that was on my list that came out was Nonstop with Liam Neeson. I got to say, I liked the movie. Interestingly, it spawned a bit of controversy, kind of political controversy, which was interesting. I don't want to give it away, but the controversy involved the portrayal of 911, September 11th, survivors, showing them in a not too favorable light. So it's interesting how people will find a reason to complain about everything. I took it for what it was. It was entertainment. It was not. I did not get the impression it was trying to push an agenda. But clearly, some people did, and so they've been making a big deal over it. I didn't, and I normally do. I don't trust. I'll be honest with you. I don't trust liberals anyway, and so I'm more likely to find where, like in Avatar, that was clearly an agenda pushed by that, and I'm not surprised because that's what Cameron is all about. That guy, that's all he does is he's very blatant about his activism, and so it doesn't surprise me a bit that he might have an agenda in his movies, and it was pretty obvious. I didn't see that in this one, and there are a lot of people in the conservative realm that threw the yellow flag on this, and I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I didn't see it that way. There are fruits and flakes and crazy people in every walk of life, and so you just have to accept that there are going to be those who go completely off the rails, regardless of what your philosophy is. And that's what this story was about. So if you're into this kind of movie, action, thriller kind of thing, it was worth it. It was fun. It was a good show. Good movie. Good show. Let's see. Tech news. Speaking of political stuff, I found this rather interesting. Of course, we have the Xbox One here at our house, and we use it, love it. Just recently got yet another update that added some more features to it, and it seems to be a little bit faster too. Pretty cool. It's not nearly up to speed with like the Windows desktop or even certainly the Windows phone, but they're quickly trying to bring the platforms together, which is great. But anyway, as part of being part of the whole Microsoft ecosystem, we have an Xbox Live account. That's how you can access the full features of Xbox One. It's how we are able to stream the music that we can stream, all this fun stuff. Interestingly, Microsoft was apparently at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, big conference that they have every year, rallying conservatives together, getting the hoorah kind of feel. But apparently, Microsoft was running around, according to a number of reports, and this is the version from WP Central, that Microsoft was there pushing an idea about using Xbox Live gamer tags and public information, stuff that you make available as an Xbox Live account holder, to build a demographic database for use for targeting political ads on the dashboard, as well as through Skype and MSN, because those platforms all have ads in them now. And we'll probably see more of that, interestingly. So, evidently, Microsoft is kind of working that angle, which doesn't surprise me because I am sure that Google does a lot more of that, and they're clandestine about it. But Microsoft's trying to monetize their investments. So can't say I blame them, but I just thought it was interesting that that's the direction they went to go. So they will probably show up at whatever the Democrat or liberal version of CPAC is or are, if there's multiple ones. They'll probably do the same thing there because they want to hit as many people as possible there. When it comes to making money, there's no political philosophy. When it comes to donating money, that's when you see political philosophies show up in businesses, whatever is going to help them out. So I thought that was interesting. Other tech news, interestingly, Windows 8.1 which is what we're currently running on all our machines here. And this is the currently released version, generally available. A lot of press in the tech blogger world has been made about the update 1, the spring update, whatever they're calling it, that was supposed to come out in April. I think as part of Build, which is a Microsoft meeting for developers. Somebody found out that by a small registry change in Windows 8.1, that it gave them visibility of this update 1, this spring update on Microsoft servers. For those who have Windows PCs, you probably are aware that you can go into the Windows Update option in your control panel or in Internet Explorer, and if you haven't set your machine up to automatically do updates, you can actually go out there and look for updates for your machine. They also have Patch Tuesday, which is like the second Tuesday of every month, where they push these patches out. Well, we had already heard weeks ago that this update for Windows 8.1 was going to be made available via the Windows Update, not through the Windows Store. Somebody discovered that a registry entry that made your computer look like a what's the word I'm looking for? An internal Microsoft computer. In other words, like you're one of Microsoft's employees. And they have this in the developer world. They have, with all these companies, they have this term called dog fooding, And it's where, as an employee using your own company's platform or software, you end up trying your own work. So when you're a developer at Microsoft working on updates to Windows and you're running Windows on your machine, dog fooding means that you're installing the same work that you've been building in the on developer machines. You're using it actually in-house. So this registry entry apparently made your machine look to Microsoft's update servers as if you were an internal machine. And so all of the pieces of this update were there. People found it and started pulling them down, started downloading them, installing them. And because they knew, everybody knew, it was just a matter of time before Microsoft realized their mistake and would yank these updates from the servers. And so a number of sites, a number of people actually downloaded the installable pieces and have made them available. So actually, if you're brave enough, and I'll give you a warning about this here in a second. If you were brave enough or are brave enough, you could download those. If you caught it early enough, within the first 24 hours, you could have simply made this registry entry and then gone out to the regular update process, and you would have hit their servers and seen all these updates, and you just update them. But as time rolled on, very shortly, Microsoft was catching their mistake, and they were blocking those updates. So you could still find where people had downloaded them, and you could install them. And I actually did that on a couple of our machines because I wanted to see the difference. I had heard a lot of rumors, and I was concerned as to what was going to happen, what that was going to do for my world. And turns out I was right to be afraid. But so that's what I did. I was able to pull most of them down from Microsoft, but there was one I couldn't get from them in time. And luckily, somebody else had pulled it down, and I installed it from where they had saved it. Let me put this caveat. If you choose to go out there and look for these updates, now that we're a couple of days out from this, the likelihood that somebody has taken those downloaded pieces and inserted malware into them is higher and higher as we get further away. There was almost no chance of somebody getting the download even within a day of the accidental release and putting any real malware in it for you to download. There's just no time because they have to figure out how to get it inserted into there and then recompile or repackage the update. But now we're a couple of days out from this. The likelihood increases that somebody has been able to insert malware in the package. So if you choose to track these down and update your machine to the update 1, the spring update for Windows 8.1, do so at your own risk, because you might be introducing bots or other malware to your computers. So do so at your own risk. As for me, my opinion is I generally hate the update because it's doing the kinds of things that I had read it was going to do, and it was a mess, in my opinion. I like Metro. I like the app's approach. I don't have anything on my desktop, the old desktop screen. Everything that I run runs from my start screen, even legacy apps, because you can pin anything to your start screen. That is my start menu. A lot of whiners complain that when you click on the old Windows button at the lower left of your screen, that you don't get your old programs list, all that, which most people didn't use anyway, except painfully. They would find what they want, and they would paste a shortcut, thousands of shortcuts on their desktop. It looks stupid, but that's what they would do. But instead, you have the start screen. That's your new start menu. That's your new programs list. So I've got everything that I want there. And so if I click on the tile and it kicks off a program that's legacy and it runs on the desktop, that's fine. It runs on the desktop. The software I'm running for this show right now is legacy software. The XSplit software it runs on the desktop. So I have no choice. But I can easily window the desktop and bring in, I could be watching a Twitter feed in a pane by splitting my screen this way, using the Metro capability. Because I have dual screens here, I have over my right screen, which let me switch to a camera where you can see. Here we go. So over here, I have on my second screen, that is the desktop. In other words, I've dragged things over from the desktop here. So I'm actually using this as a screen region that I can capture in the XSplit software. So anytime I do stuff like this, you're seeing that screen. You're seeing a captured section of that screen that I can use. So that's what that's all about. But on this screen, I can have all the Metro stuff. It works great. But unfortunately, what Microsoft did with this latest update is they started, because there were people who were complaining that if you don't have a touchscreen, that it wasn't mouse or keyboard friendly. I totally disagree. I use the mouse and keyboard on all of the. None of our PCs or laptops are touch. And I have no problem navigating. I'm very fast navigating with the mouse, especially the mouse, on these. And oh, by the way, if you have a modern laptop or a keyboard that has this feature as well, modern laptops have a touchpad. That mouse pad area on the bottom of your laptop is also a touchpad, 2-finger. So in Windows 8, you can use the pinch and zoom by using that touchpad. My keyboard. Let me switch to the other camera. This keyboard has a touchpad. So I can do pinch and zoom by using that. Same thing on your laptop. Same device. Same concept. So people don't realize that they actually probably have some part of the touch capability already, especially if you have a laptop. But anyway, I find it very easy to use. Well, now what they've done is they've dragged. First of all, after you reboot, it boots you directly to the desktop. I hate that. I don't like using the desktop unless I absolutely have to. I like working in the Metro meme. I've been trying to find Metro app replacements for every legacy program that I have. Once Microsoft Office comes out with their, I think it's called Gemini. Once they come out with Gemini that runs on the Metro side, man, that's gonna be golden for me. But anyway, what they did was now there are things that I could do with the mouse on the Metro side that I can no longer do because of this latest update. One of the things for me is if you want to do certain things with multiple tiles on the screen, you could, with 8.1 and older, you could right-click on multiple tiles and select them. The right-click becomes a multi-select. And when you go into various apps, it's the same way. When you go into the SkyDrive app or now it's OneDrive, and you right-click on things, it allows you to multi-select things. So then you can delete them, move them, do whatever. One-handed. Well, now, guess what they've done? Because people were whining about not having they wanted the context menu from the desktop. So now that is on the Metro side. Now, if you right-click on a tile, you get a stupid pop-up, but it only works for one tile at a time. You have to use two hands now to multi-select things. If you want to delete, unpin, resize, whatever, you cannot do it with one hand now. You have to press Control left click to do it. It's this kind of craziness that is ruining the Metro side for me. And I think it's a bad mistake. I feel like slapping the people who are holding on to the old way of doing things that are pushing Microsoft to go backward on all this. I have no problem dragging, if I insist on exiting an app, I have no problem going up to the top of the screen, anywhere on the top of the screen, just clicking and dragging it, just throw it off. Just like with your finger, you would just take it and drag it down. The mouse worked the same way. There were people who insisted having the old X that's on the desktop to exit out of programs. First of all, on the Metro side, you don't have to exit programs. It manages the memory, just like Windows Phone does. You don't have to do that. The desktop side, yes, it's all sitting there, and so it's eating up your resources. The Metro side handles the memory management very differently. And so you don't have to keep exiting programs, but people insist it. They're anal retentive about it, and they can't get over the old way, the way we've always done it. But so now they've added this little title bar. As you move your cursor up to the top of an app, it changes to this annoying title bar with the X. I'm like, you know what? I can grab anywhere on the top of the app, drag it off the screen faster than anybody can go up to that little X and click it. I guarantee it. I've tried it. So it just is crazy to me that people they're refusing to wrap their head around the new way of doing things. They're going to be dragged kicking and screaming to the new world, but it's just amazing to me. So basically, I spent an hour and a half searching through all the different settings that Update 1 did to screw up the user experience for me on Windows 8 and revert it back. The only thing I still can't get rid of, and I'm sure it's going to be a registry entry I have to do, I can't get rid of the context menu. I want to get rid of that so I can go back to single right click to multi-select things. I want to go back to that. So if I can find a registry entry that nullifies that, puts it back the way it was, I'm going to be happy camper. And if I can get rid of the annoying title bar that's showing up on each of the Metro apps, if I can get rid of those two things, I'll be okay with the rest of it. So if anybody out there who's a real registry guru and is running the Update 1 and can find where it is in the registry, I can turn that off. Basically, I think what it is I have to be able to fake Windows 8 with this update, fake it out and make it think that I am a touch machine, even though I don't have touch screens. Because I think those don't show up if it's on like a tablet. So I need to find a way that I can fake this out and make it think I'm running a tablet, even though obviously with most of your tablets you can connect a keyboard and mouse. I don't want to ever see that junk again. So we'll see what happens. So I'm putting that out there if somebody can come up with that. Let's see. Oh yeah. Moving over to a little bit of scuba news. I follow LinkedIn and a number of groups in LinkedIn for PADI instructors or dive instructors, or just recreational diving, and came across some people talking about a blog post by Bob Hathaway, who owns Odyssey Scuba in Waynesville, Missouri. Waynesville, party on, excellent. He posted a blog about how he felt that the recreational diving industry has gotten way too serious and it's focusing more on making big sales and pushing an ecological agenda, and it's no longer attracting people to the sport, or it's significantly hobbled in its attracting people to the sport. What he's suggesting is that now might be the perfect time to shift gears and put the focus back on the recreational aspect. And I have to say, I was like, yeah, I totally get that. I think that is a great idea. the reason I got into scuba diving is because it was fun. The reason I became an instructor was because I wanted to share that fun experience with other people. I'm not in it to make money. Lord knows that. Because ultimately I don't in the end, but with all the fees and everything. But the thing for me is I enjoy the sport so much, and because I think it's a sport that almost everybody can enjoy, I want to share that. So I push the fun aspect. Yes, I make sure all the instruction is done correctly. I follow the PADI standards. But my emphasis is that it's fun, because that's what it should be. I don't push the project aware and that kind of stuff. I make the information available to students. I let them know that's all out there. I encourage them to go to the PADI website. Matter of fact, no, I didn't bring it up. I encourage them to go to these different places and become aware and be cognizant of the world they're diving in. And obviously, since I'm not running a dive shop, I'm not trying to sell them gear. So that's not the thing for me. But I do get it. I do get what Bob Hathaway is saying. It seems like every time I turn around, PADI, NAUI, SSI, a number of the other organizations, and the groups they associate and affiliate themselves with, are always pushing that kind of agenda. And so, yeah, I could get why that would turn a lot of folks away. I can't stress enough that this is a fun activity. It's easy enough to do for most people. Can be challenging for some, but the experience you get in going out to places you've never been before, experiencing a world that only 1% of the world ever experiences, is remarkable. The memories you come away with, the friendships that you get along the way, the people you get introduced to along the way, all make for just a great overall opportunity in your life that sets you apart from so many people. And it's something that, especially if you're like me and now getting into the videography and the photography bits of it, are things that really can enhance other aspects of your life. Our house now is an homage to a lot of that. We've got, it's colored, flavored the way we decorate our house, because it's just a wonderful experience. It's fun. It should be fun. You get the skills, you get the gear, and then go have fun. That's the point. Yes, be considerate, as you should with everything, not just diving. Be considerate of the environment that you're in. Don't throw trash around. Don't hurt the wildlife. Don't damage the environment. But don't make that the sole focus of what you're doing. That should become, if you're doing what you need to do as a diver, then you automatically are taking care of all that business. It's part of how you dive. If you are a careful, considerate diver, you're going to have good buoyancy control. You're not going to be bumping into coral. You're not going to be dumping trash into the ocean or the lakes or whatever. It's all going to be a matter of course for you. We don't need to beat people over the head with it to just simply lay that out there. I do agree with Bob Hathaway that we should be pushing the fun aspect, the recreational aspect of it, because that's the real reason to do it. If you want to make a profession out of it, become a wildlife ocean biologist or an ocean activist or whatever, okay, fine, do that if that's what your drive is. But don't, your average diver, don't get swallowed up in that. And hopefully more instructors, more dive shops will get that, will understand. You know what? Let's keep appropriate balance and focus on things. So the title of the episode today was "Here's a Tip for You." And so I was kind of looking throughout the internet of, you see a lot of various blogs or forums where people make different comments and things. And you can kind of get a feel for new divers, intermediate divers, very experienced divers, things that they kind of hold true as axioms, or things that, I always go by this. And most of this is kind of common sense, but I kind of wanted to pull together some different tips that I more frequently hear from people as reminders to beginning divers. Now, these are all things we teach, and we would hope that you actually practice them. But as an experienced diver, as an instructor, I can't stress some of these enough. I say them often, no matter where I'm diving with folks. You get into a conversation, you reinforce certain things, but it's important for newer divers to really get certain things reinforced to them. So, the most frequent tips that I saw showing up from other instructors and these various forums, as well as from instructors and experienced divers. Of course, the number one thing, and you would be surprised to find how many people catch themselves doing this, but never hold your breath. It's one of the cardinal rules that we teach in the course. But you will find people kind of trying to extend their air by doing skip breathing, which is basically just holding it's a form of holding your breath. Don't do that. All it takes is one time to make that mistake on an ascent, and you've damaged yourself, potentially fatally. Keep hydrated and stay in shape. I teach just about anybody. I've had people who were very large and very, very skinny. But I've had people very large that I had to be very aware of what was going on. And you open yourself up to potential problems, more so when you're out of shape and dehydrated and overweight than somebody who's not. Here in Del Rio, Texas, although this year has sucked as far as weather, it's been much colder than normal. We're normally very warm. Certainly by the summer, we're extremely hot. And you can get dehydrated very, very quickly here. So it's very important to keep yourself hydrated. It doesn't take much time in neoprene to bleed through your water capacity. You will sweat that out very quickly before you get in the water. And if you don't have a sufficient volume of water in your bloodstream, in your tissues, you are introducing more opportunity for experiencing decompression sickness. It's just, as well as some other issues, you could be more susceptible to nitrogen narcosis, a number of things. No man is an island. Now, we teach the buddy system. We teach that you should be diving with another diver, hopefully somebody that has the same experience as you. You go through the communication pieces, make sure you both are understanding the dive and can go down, enjoy yourselves, and come up together safely. But there are a lot of people that have bad habits. They'll dive without somebody and without appropriate redundancy in their equipment. Or when they dive with somebody, it's purely the facade of diving with somebody. You're entering the water with them. You may even have done your pre-dive safety check with them. But what happens, you get in the water and you kind of go in your own separate ways. One of you has got a camera, and so you end up focusing on something, and the other diver swims off. And you end up no longer being buddies because you're separated by too much water and not enough air in many cases. So it's important to realize that having that other person there that's the person who's going to haul your rear end out of the fire if something goes horribly wrong. A lot of tragic reports have come because dive buddies got separated by enough distance that the person experiencing the problem bolted to the surface rather than to their buddy. And so that's a dangerous thing to set yourself up for, especially as a new diver. If you can hook up with a more experienced diver, then make sure you stick to them. You will see a lot of your better dive masters. You will see them as they're getting to know the group. They'll see where their pairs are, who's buddied with who, and if they're watching during the dive, they may see if you're too separated, and they'll do something like they'll point at both of you and they'll do this number, which means buddy up. Make sure you get closer together. I do that a lot. I'll either assign buddies that way. I'll say you and you are buddied together, or if I know that they're a buddy team and I think that they're too far away from each other, I'll get their attention and I'll give that signal to them. And then also, it's not a bad idea to file a flight plan. Now, obviously, one of the things we teach is plan your dive and dive your plan. You figure out what you're going to do. You both agree on it, and then you go do it, and then you stick to it. But let others know that aren't going to be on the dive. Hey, we're going to be going out here. We're going to be heading on a heading of 280, going to this coral formation, and then we'll hover around that, and then we'll come back, or we'll surface from there. Whatever it is. Better yet, especially with something when you're diving like out here at Amistad, Lake Amistad, if you have people on shore, let them know. If you have people at home, let them know what you're doing. Tell them what you're going to do about when you're going to go down, when you're going to be coming up. Because if you run into trouble and you've not contacted them and they know where you've said you were going to be, you have a much better chance of getting emergency help if you need it, if something goes wrong, because you've missed your flight plan, if you will. And then also have an emergency plan. Know all the people that you need to contact. Like Amistad, that's going to be, you could call the Border Patrol because they have boats out there. The Texas Park Service, because they have boats out there, as well as the Sheriff's Department. Knowing how to having the numbers ready, etc., to contact those folks and how to describe to them how to get to you is important. So remember, no man is an island. Think about all these. What would you do if? And imagine the worst case scenario and prepare for that. Can't stress that enough as a newer diver, beginning diver. Surface with care. We teach in the class that you should be, you come up in the Superman pose where you have one hand holding your power inflator to release air as you come up, because as you come up, air expands and it will create more buoyancy because you're displacing more water. So you need to be dumping air as you are swimming to the surface. But also the other hand is up over your head, so in case you are coming straight to the surface, you're not going to smack your head on something. If you want to get an idea what I'm talking about, see the movie Open Water 2. And you'll see what happens when somebody's comes bolting to the surface and they don't have their hand up blocking themselves. And then also remember, you've got to maintain a slow, constant speed coming up to the surface. Now we're teaching 30 feet per minute. Okay, 3 feet per second. So that's a pretty slow ascent. Or watch the smallest bubble that you're exhaling. Don't come up any faster than your smallest bubble. Okay? That if you lose your depth gauge or lose your watch or whatever, that at least gives you something that's a ballpark to keep you safer. So slow, safe ascents. And then the last tip for beginners is never get caught without spares. You, as a new diver, are probably not likely to have your own gear. So, as a result, it's harder for you to adopt this particular philosophy. But it's not impossible. And it's one more reason why I strongly suggest you start building your gear. It's so much less expensive now than it was when I got started in diving. But don't be without what they call a save-a-dive kit. Matter of fact, let me see if I can pull that up. I'm going to go to diversupply.com, which is one of my favorite places to shop for scuba gear. Let's see. Save. Oh, there we go. I had to type with save and I already knew save-a-dive kit. Search. All right, let me switch to the screen region here. So here are some examples of a save-a-dive kit. Let me see if I can get this one magnified here. Let me make this picture bigger. No. Let me switch back. I think that was bigger. Not really. So what you have with this, this is just an example of different types of save-a-dive kits. You'll notice that it's got in here O-rings. So, because the most common thing to fail on your gear is probably going to be the O-ring, which is where your first stage of your regulator attaches. So you want to have some spare O-rings. Now, what I do, which I can't claim ownership of this idea, but what I do is I actually attach, if you look at a tank, it has a dust cover on it, which is held to the neck of the valve via a little string. Okay. What I do is I will, as part of attaching that string, because I won't go into details, but the way the dust cover is connected to a typical dive tank, it's easily removable. Okay, because the string is a loop. It's a closed loop. So there's a trick you can do that allows you to feed something, wrap it around and feed it through itself, and it's there. Well, you can. I keep an O-ring on that string. So if somebody runs into a problem with a tank, there's an O-ring right there. They can quickly remove the old one, stick the new one on, and away they go. But, and I also have actually multiple save-a-dive kits with a number of other O-rings, not just that type, because there's a number of O-rings that could go bad. But also, you notice on here, the black strap there, that's for the typical, there are exceptions, but that's for the typical fin. You can, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people yank their fins on and then they break the strap. And so if you don't have a replacement, you're out of the dive. Unless somebody has a spare fin that they can let you use, or spare set. But why dive with somebody else's gear when you can dive with your own if you have a spare strap? The translucent or opaque strap next to that is a mask strap. Again, for the typical type of mask. So if you happen to put your mask on and it's been a while, you've had the thing a while, and the strap atrophies and breaks, you've got a replacement. There's also a replacement mouth guard. You should also keep some zip ties, because that's how the mouthpieces for your regulator are attached, through zip ties. So if you have to replace one, let's say it rips or whatever, first thing you got to do is take off the old zip tie, and then put the new mouthpiece on there, and then you affix the zip tie to it. There's a number of other things that can go in your save-a-dive kit, but a little tool set is good, because that helps you, that'll enable you to actually do the removal replacement process for a number of these bits as well. So Save Dive Kit is well worth its weight in gold to allow you to complete a dive, or actually get started on a dive, because usually the abort issues come before you even get in the water. So that be my tips, for the most common tips I see for beginners. There's tons more I could give you, because every time, it's like every situation is different, and I run into something, I say, oh, well, here's a good tip for you. Do this, or don't do that. But these were the common ones I saw showing up most frequently on various forums and blogs. So another type of tip that I've got for you is diving in fresh water. Now, I know plenty of people. Robert is one of those who has only been diving in fresh water. He has never gone diving in salt water. But most divers that I know, that's their place to dive. In fact, sadly, what I run into is divers who don't dive frequently. The only time they do dive is when they get to go on trips to exotic climbs where there's nice, warm salt water and the visibility is great, etc., etc. They don't. Then when they come home, they come back to the States or whatever, they never dive in freshwater. But there are things to know. I dive more in freshwater than I do in saltwater, because we don't get a lot of opportunities, typically once a year, to go dive saltwater. So most of my diving, and obviously for teaching classes, is all freshwater here at Lake Amistad. So I've got a few tips for you folks who maybe dive in frequently, and that means that you don't dive in freshwater very much, or you happen to be planning to dive here at Lake Amistad. This will help you out. First of all, be aware of your altitude. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, what do you mean be aware of my altitude? We're in southwest Texas. It's pretty flat here, which it is. But believe it or not, we are technically at altitude. We are just over 1,000 feet. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can get the exact... Let's see. Altitude. Del Rio, Texas. At the airport, our elevation is 1,002 feet. And so those who've been through training know that altitude diving is above 1,000 feet. So technically, diving at Lake Amistad, you are diving altitude. And so there are things to be aware of. Now, we go frequently to Balmorhea State Park, which is at 3,205 feet. So that's definitely diving at altitude, because basically you're at the base of the Davis Mountains there. So yeah, you're diving at altitude. So be aware that once you leave the coast, you are potentially working your way up to altitude dive. So here in Del Rio, you're technically doing altitude diving, and in Balmorhea, you definitely are. So there are things to be aware of. If you're running analog gauges, you're probably most likely using a what they call a bourbon tube type analog gauge, which does not accurately reflect your depth when you go to altitude. And so there are things that you have to calculate. If you're diving with a modern dive computer, most of them automatically compensate for your altitude. And so they do two things for you. They compensate for the altitude, so they give you a true depth reading. And then also they're recalculating the dive tables based on that new altitude. Okay. There are some computers that you actually have to tell them that you're diving at altitude. I strongly recommend that you get one that automatically does it. It's just so much easier to deal with. All the ones that we have, that I use for training, that we use here, or do it automatically. But so if you happen to be diving analog gauges, and if you're somebody having a contact issue here, we have to pop a contact out here. If you are a new diver and just getting your gear for the first time, there's a better than even chance that to save yourself some money on your first purchase, that you went with a package that has analog gauges rather than a computer. And that's fine. That just means you're going to be using the analog depth gauge with your dive tables and a watch of some type, so you can properly plan your dive and dive your plan and avoid decompression issues. But if you're diving at altitude, there are two things you have to consider: the accuracy of the gauge, and then how you adjust your tables, how you calculate based on the dive. So here's what you do. If you're using like a bourbon tube type gauge, you have to add 1 foot to your depth plus another foot for every 1,000 feet of altitude that you're at. And you always round up, just like we round up with your dive tables. So if you're at let's use, matter of fact, let's do this. I have prepared. There we go. All right. So let's use Balmorhea State Park as an example. Altitude there is 3,205 feet. So you're going to round that right off the bat to 4,000, because you always round up to the next 1,000. All right. So we got you're getting ready to do your dive. Let's say you're using the bourbon tube gauge and you go down to 90 feet, or you're planning your dive for 90 feet, which you can't at Balmorhea, but you can only go about 21 feet. But just say theoretically they had the ground open up and much more water is in there. So let's say your gauge reads 90 feet, or you're planning to dive 90 feet. Okay, since you're diving rounded up to 4,000 feet, you automatically add 1 foot to that, plus 1 foot per each 1,000 feet of altitude. Not each 1,000 feet of altitude above 1,000, because that's where you start using your special considerations. It's the full altitude. So that means that we're going to have our 90 feet plus the 1 foot plus 4 feet, because you have to include 1 foot for each 1,000 of the 4,000 feet altitude. So 4 times 1 foot times 4 gives you the 4. So 90 plus 1 plus 4. So your calculated adjusted depth that you're diving, if you're going someplace that's 3,205 feet, is now going to be 95 feet. Okay? So basically, once you've calculated what your adjustment's going to be, you, in this case, 5 feet. So you would just add 5 feet, in this case, to any depth that you're calculating. So in Balmorhea, for real, you can dive 21 feet. So you'd actually be treating it like you're diving additional 5 feet. So 26 feet is actually what you're diving, if you're using a gauge that is not capable of automatically adjusting for that. Now, another consideration when diving altitude is the fact that you may be coming from sea level up to that altitude. Now, what I'm about to share with you, what you see on the screen here, is most common approach from people who are typically flying to a location. You know, you're flying from a sea level location wherever you're at to this new location to dive. Okay, so there's going to be a pretty quick change of your altitude. So if you were leaving Del Rio and somehow flying up to Balmorhea, you're going from 1,000 feet to 3,000 feet in a matter of just a few minutes. Of course, we typically drive there, and that's a 4-hour drive. So you're really eating this up during your drive. But here's the point: just like Just like if you were surfacing from underwater, okay, you have to come up slowly because you're trying to release nitrogen from your system, okay? It's not as dramatic when you're dealing with air pressure on the surface because we have a much less dramatic change in our air pressure on our body going from sea level to, in this case, 3,000 feet, 3,205 feet. It's much less dramatic. It's not like coming up from 33 feet to the surface. But if I'm in Del Rio, or better yet, as an example, if I am on the coast, if I'm at South Padre in Texas at sea level, and I'm breathing regular air, 21% oxygen, 79% nitrogen and trace gases, I'm breathing that at 1 atmosphere, okay, right there at the surface. If I go to Balmorhea, I have actually reduced the pressure because I've gone to altitude. So I'm actually experiencing less pressure. So you still have to deal with adjusting to the equalization of that nitrogen in your system. So on a 4-hour drive, as you're gradually increasing your altitude, you're aspirating that extra nitrogen because it's being released from your system because there's less pressure on your body. If you fly to a location that's a higher altitude, your body doesn't have enough time to off-gas that correctly. So what you typically want to do is when you arrive at a site that you're going to dive that's at altitude, the rule of thumb is you wait 6 hours before you dive. Now, if you can't or choose not to wait the 6 hours, here is what you need to do. You have to work your tables. So the rule is that you figure 2 pressure groups for every 1,000 feet of altitude. So if we go back to our example above, we're going to Balmorhea, which is 3,205 feet. You round that to 4,000. So if you figure your new pressure group as 2 pressure groups for every 1,000, so rounding up to 4,000, how many 1,000 increments are there? 4. So we use 2 pressure groups for each of those changes. So the first 1,000 is pressure group A to B. The next 1,000 is C to D. The next 1,000 is E to F. The last 1,000 is G to H. So your pressure group, when you first arrive at Balmorhea, is going to be pressure group H. Okay? So it's as if you surfaced from a dive because you've come from a deeper, a higher compression to a less compression. So it's as if you surfaced already in pressure group H. So if you know that, you can pull up your tables and you can do a calculation for your dive, okay? What you were going to be diving, let's say you're going to dive at Balmorhea 21 feet. If you're using a computer that's automatically adjusting to it, okay, so for this sake, we'll just say we are, then you already have to start with your beginning pressure group as H on the dive. Now, guess what else you can do if you're using the special considerations for altitude diving. If you're arriving at Balmorhea, it's probably better than even chance that you're not going to immediately park and jump in the water and start diving. It's probably going to be another hour before you unload, get everybody situated, get your gear hauled over to the pool area, and suit up and dive. Best case is going to be an hour. So soon as you get there, you could treat it as if you just surface as pressure group H, and then you start calculating what your surface interval is. So let's say it's an hour. So you're going to be gradually reducing your pressure group just because you're calculating a new surface interval having surfaced from sea level to altitude as a pressure group H. Okay? So those are the considerations to think about if you're diving at altitude. So be aware of your altitude and make sure that you're properly compensating for it. All right. Let's see. Next tip. Especially diving out here at Amistad. Bring a dive knife, and better yet, also bring dive shears. Now, everybody knows what a dive knife is. Let me pull up. They call them scissors. I've always referred to them as EMT shears, emergency medical technician shears, because they can cut through things like seat belts. So here's an example of dive shears. You can get them in the nice little clippable or strappable pouches, that kind of thing. Those are some really fancy shears, but these are typical ones. You can see they're not very expensive, $10, $12. And they're very lightweight, so they don't add, they don't really negatively impact your buoyancy control. But let me tell you, out here at Amistad and a lot of your lakes, a lot of your diving is going to be shore diving. So what you're going to run into is the virtually invisible fishing line. Or worse, you may run into the trot lines, which are thicker. They're practically wire. And so if you're diving along, suddenly you get tangled up in something, you either need to pull a knife or you need to pull shears like this to cut through it so you don't make your problem worse. I can't tell you how many times I've used both. I prefer the shears because they're much easier to handle, especially with gloves, and they cut through more than a typical dive knife will. And you're less likely to poke yourself with dive shears than you will a knife, especially if you got a pointed knife as opposed to a blunt-ended knife. Okay, so knife or dive shears, absolute must when diving in fresh water. Nope. That's interesting. Let's see. Next on the hit parade, dive lights. Okay. So here's the thing. When you're diving in fresh water, you typically don't have the kind of currents, etc., that clear out particulates in the water. You've got typically a lake, or a quarry, which accumulates silt and gets a very thick coating of it on the bottom or surfaces of rocks, etc. And it doesn't take much to kick those up. Now, you can help reduce this yourself by like split fins or other types of fins that are less susceptible. The way the vortex they create is less likely to kick up silt. But you're not the only thing out there. You're probably not the only diver out there. The fact is, there will be all sorts of particulates, algae blooms in the water, etc., that are suspended that make visibility less than optimum. So as you go deeper, more of that is above you. So what happens? That's filtering light, which means you're going to have less light the deeper you go. Much more dramatic than salt water. So I cannot stress enough how having a light with you, even if all you do is just carry your backup light. Robert and I and Tara, we always dive with a BC light. And it's just typically a small, matter of fact, let me pull up lights or torches if you're in the Europe area. See if I can find one that has like a little kit. Oh, this was pretty good. Yeah, let me show this one. Here's some examples of little BC lights. These are only about 3, 4, 5 inches long. And it's very easy to hook them to a D-ring or stick them in your BC pocket. They're typically, the newer ones, especially LEDs, are very bright, fairly lightweight, especially if they're LED. And being able to just whip those out when you need to see something better. Because out here at Amistad, you can go down to 60 feet and be needing a light. In the middle of day, with the sun straight overhead, you can be at 60 feet and be needing a light. So even if you're not going to bring a primary, having a really good quality, powerful backup light, a BC light, is handy to have. I never dive without a light. I never, ever. Even in saltwater, I never dive without a BC light attached. And it's well worth it to be able to see what you need to see at a critical point. Okay. Get to know your compass. We teach the compass in the class, both the basic and the advanced. Most of your diving out at lakes is going to be shore diving, but you could be doing a boat dive. And so being able to plot a simple out and back course is critical. Otherwise, you may find yourself doing the long surface swim or popping up someplace where you're trying to frantically signal your boat to come get you. So, very important to keep your skills up, your compass skills. And even on a shore dive, you could get disoriented and forget which direction you were following along to work your way back. Most shorelines are not like a straight cut. They're jagged, so you're cutting in and out. You might get turned around and not realize where you're at. Oh, there go the dogs getting excited over something. Hard sole boots. Not many freshwater dive areas have sandy shores. They're usually going to be pretty rocky. And if they're like Lake Amistad, you have a bunch of Neanderthals out there who are inconsiderate of everybody else, and they have beer bottles and beer cans and fishing hooks all over the place. You don't want to be walking around barefooted or on sharp rocks or any of this, the trash, in either bare feet or some of the thinner soled dive boots. Get dive boots that have a thicker sole. As a matter of fact, let's see if I can pull that up too. The ones I have are pretty cool. I'll just type boots. Here we go. Here's a good example. I have a set like this, as a matter of fact. My wife and I both do. As you can see, that's a pretty hefty sole there, and you can actually get some that are even tougher. You see, you don't want something like that out at Lake Amistad. Those are very, very flexible, very thin. Even those are too thin. Let's see if we can find some heavy duty. Here we go. That's a set that's pretty good. Pretty hefty there. Now, a thing to remember when you're looking at the thicker soled, I had to pick up one of the dogs that just got back from running outside and barking at everybody in the neighborhood. One of the things to consider when you are buying boots is your fins, because that's what you're going to be wearing over these boots. I suppose you could wear these just to go up and down, but they're neoprene. They're designed to be used while diving. So a consideration is how your fins fit. I have a set of fins that I use with my thinner boots, like the examples that I showed you. And I have a set of fins that I use with my thicker boots, because if I try to, there's no way my thicker boots will fit inside the fin pocket, the foot pocket of my fins that are the smaller ones. By the same token, if I try to wear my thinner boots, my 1 mil neoprene boots that are perfect for sand, if I try to wear those in my bigger fins, there's so much room that I can't even tighten the strap enough to make those fit comfortably. And you want your fins to fit comfortably so you can have full control of your mobility underwater. So that's a consideration. So for diving at places like Lake Amistad, where there's a lot of rocks, a lot of debris, a lot of trash from filthy people, you need to get the thicker boots and make sure you have fins that work with those boots. So it's important to consider all the aspects of your dive rig, your dive setup, your personal gear. And don't be the people who leave trash out there. By the same token that you hate having to wear the thicker dive boots just because of all the trash that people leave, don't be the person that leaves trash out there. Okay. Last tip I have for you is watch your buoyancy. You're just getting used to that as a newer diver, but as you get experience, hopefully you're improving your buoyancy control. The buoyancy control does a number of things for you. Most of them are obvious, but when you're diving in places like Lake Amistad, you're less likely to get entangled if you're not dragging along the bottom or along submerged trees where fishing line typically gets hooked into and is cut and left there for you to get tangled up in. So get your buoyancy control down and watch that. Be aware that if you're used to diving saltwater, you are more buoyant in saltwater than you are in freshwater using the exact same gear. But when you dive freshwater, that's typically colder water. So what are you going to do to compensate for the colder water? You're going to wear more neoprene, which is going to do what? It's going to increase your buoyancy. It's going to make you float more. So you do not want to get stuck compensating for the colder water by wearing more neoprene and realize I don't have enough weight to get down or stay down. So keep that consideration. Even though you're less buoyant in fresh water, your weight requirements may be actually the same as saltwater if you're adding neoprene to your setup to dive the colder water. So calculate that before you get out in the water. Don't wait till you get in the water and I was like, oh, I'm wearing the same weights that I did at Grand Cayman, and realize that's not enough weight for where you're at. So those are just some tips that I have for those of you who are not used to diving freshwater or certainly not used to diving here at Lake Amistad. So, all right, we're winding down here. Here we're already more than an hour and a half. That's just awesome. Interestingly, just a little tidbit here. There are fish stories, and then there's this fish story. Evidently, back in September, the NOAA, who has, I guess they fly out of MacDill Air Force Base. I work at Laughlin Air Force Base, so this is kind of why this is interesting to me that it was an Air Force Base. One of the things we worry about at Laughlin, and most Air Force bases worry about, is bird strikes. You know, you're flying, you know, you're launching aircraft or landing aircraft. What you don't want is to have birds flying into your windshield, into your canopy, into your engine intake, and causing a flame out, and you have to abort the flight. We have, even though we're pretty far up from the coast, because we have a landfill that is somewhat close to our Air Force Base, we actually attract a lot of your seabird population. So we have quite a few of those. We have egrets and things like that too here. And so we have to be careful. We actually have a bird abatement program where they fire off cannons to scare birds off. And we fire off cannons and things like that to scare the birds off so that our aircraft have free access to take off and land. Evidently, At MacDill Air Force Base last September, a NOAA aircraft was taking off, and they hit something. So they aborted the takeoff and pulled back in, and they sent their the person that's responsible at MacDill Air Force Base to go look for these kinds of things. They said, okay, we think you're probably going to find a dead bird out here, so go take a look. So she gets out there, and no bird, nothing. What she does find is a fish. So, of course, they're like, what in the world? So they do some checking. They examine the aircraft, and they do some DNA testing of the tissue that was found on where the aircraft was struck, and it matched the fish. So what they had was is just crazy. So MacDill Air Force Base had aborted takeoff due to a fish strike. What they believe happened, and of course they can't confirm this, but what they believe happened, because there was no other explanation to make sense, I guess they have bald eagles there in that area. So they're always watching for that. What they think happened is a bald eagle probably was eating a fish there close to the strip, and when the plane was taking off, it got scared, had the fish in its hooks and its talons, and then it dropped the fish while it was trying to flee the danger of getting hit by an aircraft. And so the fish was falling through the sky and happened to get hit. It happened to hit the aircraft. So that's what they believe happened, is that the fish strike was caused by a fish being dropped by a bald eagle as it was trying to flee the area. Crazy. I'm like, that's got to look great on a aircraft safety report. Aborted takeoff due to a fish strike at MacDill Air Force Base. All right, we're winding down here. Let me hit a little bit of administrivia here. There we go. Our next dive club meeting is the 20th of March at 7 p.m. at Rudy's Restaurant. And we do have dive classes, basic classes scheduled for 2014. You can check this all out on our website, but so we've got April 24th through the 27th, May 22nd through the 25th, June 26th through the 29th, July 24th through the 27th, August 28th to the 31st, and September 25th to the 29th. So definitely connect with us if you're interested in taking a class. Sign up at least a couple of weeks ahead so we can get you your training materials, etc. Move your clocks ahead tonight for daylight savings time. This is the time when we spring forward. So you lose an hour of sleep, precious sleep. You lose an hour. Of course, I'll never notice it because I don't sleep but 4 hours a night, with few exceptions. But move your clocks ahead so you're not late for church in the morning. Nothing worse than showing up for church late. And if you're not going to show up late for church because you don't go to church, go to church. It's a good reason to go. If you want to contact, we're not going to have an episode next weekend, the 15th of March. We will be seeing the musical, speaking of plays, musicals, we'll be seeing the touring production of Wicked. So we will not be here to do the show. If you'd like to keep in touch with us, check us out on our website, delriodiveclub.com, or even better, visit us at our Facebook page, Del Rio Dive Club. Or you can send us messages through Skype. Just look for TGWD, which stands for Two Guys Who Dive, and oddly enough. And, of course, if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, just look for @RobertCFP, or send me an email, robert.wade@cetifox.net. And hopefully 2 weeks from now, all hands will be back on deck. We got some more movie reviews for you coming up. I know Robert said there was a couple of movies. He had not seen RoboCop yet, so he'll be giving us his thoughts on that movie. And also, he mentioned he's going to see Rise of the 300, I think, and Nonstop, and what else? There was one other movie he mentioned. I can't recall. But we'll have those reviews, and there may be one. Matter of fact, looking back on the movie list that I had, coming up this month, on my list I had Divergent, Noah, and God Is Not Dead. So I think maybe I'll be reviewing Divergent by the next time we get together. I think Noah is opening the weekend that we come back to the show, so I won't be able to review that till the following show. But anyway, we'll have a number of movie reviews for you and more interesting little tidbits and ideas, suggestions for the scuba diving realm, and I'm sure some more tech information to share with you folks who are interested in that kind of thing. And we always enjoy your comments, suggestions, and chats. We didn't have anybody in the chat room today, but would love to have you on the show. We'll interact with you live on the show if you jump in the chat room. So that's all we have for tonight. Again, sorry that Robert wasn't able to be here, but of course I was joined by our little dogs. Yes, hi. So from myself and Greza, we will see you next time, 2 weeks from now, on another exciting episode of Two Guys Who Dive. See ya.